I was standing in the kitchen, half asleep, when the message came in. I'm not coming back. I found someone better. Your things are in storage. That was it. No emotion. No explanation. Just a text and a photo of a bank transfer. $112,400, drawn from our joint account and sitting comfortably in her personal one. My name's Ethan Caldwell, 51 years old. And that Thursday night in our Charlotte townhouse felt like the last scene of a movie I didn't know I was in. My wife, Melissa, was supposed to be on a girls' trip to Sedona with her wellness friends. Turns out, the only thing she was cleansing was her conscience. I stared at the screen for a long time, letting the words settle in like concrete. 15 years of marriage, dismantled in 2 sentences. I didn't respond. I didn't panic. I walked over to the coffee maker, poured what was left in the pot, and sat down at the kitchen island. I'm a numbers guy. Been a forensic accountant for over 2 decades. Patterns, gaps, discrepancies, I see them all for a living. And now, staring at that transfer receipt, I realized Melissa must have thought I was just some pencil pusher with spreadsheets. She never really understood what I do. Looking back, the signs were all there. Weekend getaways that stretched into Mondays. Fancy yoga clothes she never wore around the house. Her phone always face down. I noticed. I just didn't say anything. Maybe that was my mistake. Or maybe my mistake was believing Melissa would never use me as her escape plan. That she wouldn't burn down our life together and run off with the insurance. But she underestimated me. I opened my laptop and logged into a financial system Melissa didn't even know existed. One I designed myself, for moments just like this. My hands were steady. I wasn't angry, not yet. But I was ready. The morning after Melissa's text, I found myself standing in the closet, staring at the empty spaces where her clothes used to hang. All the designer athleisure gear she insisted she needed for branding, gone. My suits and button-downs were still there, like artifacts from a forgotten life. The silence in the townhouse felt heavier than usual. I sipped my coffee slowly, trying to piece together the last 12 months with fresh eyes. Every memory suddenly looked different. Melissa had been slipping away for a while. I just hadn't let myself admit it. The late nights at her studio that turned into weekend retreats. The new obsession with social media, influencers, and aesthetics. The yoga retreats that started as weekend escapes and morphed into week-long pilgrimages. You wouldn't like it, she'd say. Too much girl talk and green juice. I'd nod and stay home. Drowning in case files and spreadsheets, convincing myself I was being supportive. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming. I was 35, divorced once. And rebuilding my reputation after walking away from a big firm to start my own boutique accounting practice. Melissa was 31, magnetic, full of ideas. And seemingly uninterested in my world of numbers. I don't need to understand all that finance stuff, she'd say with a laugh. As long as we're good, right? I should have paid more attention. I funded her dream from the start, her yoga studio, the equipment, the branding consultant. When she wanted to move into a more upscale neighborhood, I signed the mortgage. When she said we needed matching Range Rovers to project stability, I didn't argue. Now, standing in the quiet of a house she'd vacated without a goodbye, I realized I'd built my life around someone who saw me not as a partner, but as a stepping stone. Still, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. Not yet. I just felt stupid. Used. But underneath that shame, something else was beginning to stir, something sharp, focused. Clarity. The thing about being a forensic accountant is, you learn early on that trust isn't a strategy, it's a variable. And variables change. About 6 years into our marriage, I started noticing subtle shifts in Melissa's spending habits. Not just the yoga gear or overpriced smoothies. It was the mindset, how easily she talked about money that I was earning, how entitled she became to every dollar I brought home. My father had warned me once, while we were fixing a loose step on his back deck, "Son, just make sure she respects how hard you work for what you've got." I laughed it off then. Now I realized he'd seen something I hadn't. That was the year I started quietly insulating my life. I didn't tell Melissa, not because I was hiding anything unethical, but because I knew one day I might need protection. I wasn't preparing for betrayal. I was preparing for reality. I set up 2 LLCs under separate management structures. I moved a portion of my earnings through those entities into diversified investments, real estate, cryptocurrency, and international holdings under my professional license. I established a revocable trust with my brother, Logan, listed as co-trustee. Every step was legal. Every dollar accounted for. Melissa knew about the joint checking and savings accounts, the ones we used for bills and everyday expenses. But she had no idea about the financial fortress I'd quietly built behind the scenes. She always thought I was boring with money. Safe. Predictable. "You make it, I'll spend it," she used to joke. So I let her. Because deep down, I think I knew. The way she shrugged off responsibility. The way her eyes glazed over when I tried to talk about budgeting or long-term planning. Melissa didn't care about building something together. She cared about the lifestyle. The image. Now she was gone, and so was a chunk of the money. But she hadn't touched the Real foundation. She didn't even know where it was. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a miscalculation. And she'd made it. By Friday morning, the fog had lifted. I'd spent the night rereading the message Melissa had sent, those 10 little words that detonated 15 years of marriage like it meant nothing. But instead of falling apart, I made a call I'd rehearsed in my head for years but hoped I'd never need to make. Logan answered on the second ring. "Is it time?" he asked. No surprise in his voice, just confirmation. "It's time," I said. She made her move. "Then let's lock it down." Logan works in cybersecurity, the kind of behind-the-scenes stuff most people never think about but rely on every day. Over the years, we'd built out a multi-layered contingency system. I handled the finances. He handled the digital security. Together, we'd created a protocol that could isolate and freeze key assets in under an hour. I opened my laptop and ran the first wave. Joint accounts. Frozen. Shared credit cards. Cancelled. Then I flagged the $112,400 transfer for fraud. Leveraging personal contacts in banking compliance to expedite review. I didn't lie, I submitted full documentation showing how Melissa moved the money without mutual consent while falsely claiming the account as hers alone. My financial system had tracked every login. Every transaction. Her digital fingerprints were everywhere. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was operational. Next, I sent everything to my attorney, Grace Lynn. We'd worked together on white-collar cases for years. When she read my email subject line, "Emergency, divorce action, financial misconduct evidence," she replied in under 10 minutes. "Filing now. We'll go for asset protection immediately. Hang tight." Then I called my mother. "Melissa's gone," I said simply. She took the money and moved my stuff to storage while she was supposedly on a wellness retreat. There was a pause. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she said. "But I can't say I didn't see this coming." Neither could I, not anymore. The difference was, while Melissa had been planning her exit, I'd been quietly building a fortress. She struck first. But I was already 10 moves ahead. Later that afternoon, I drove to the storage unit Melissa mentioned in her text. I punched in the code she'd so generously included, like I should be grateful, and lifted the rolling door. Inside were two boxes, one with some of my clothes, another with old files and my backup laptop. No photos. No personal items. None of the keepsakes from my dad. Or the watch he left me when he passed. She hadn't just moved out, she'd erased me. That's when something inside me shifted. The sting of betrayal had been numbing at first, but now it was sharp. Focused. Calculated. She hadn't acted out of emotion, this was a premeditated extraction. And that meant she wasn't working alone. I pulled into a quiet coffee shop, opened my laptop, and launched a private investigator-grade financial database I kept under a consulting license. If Melissa thought she could disappear with that kind of money and waltz into a new life, she clearly didn't understand what I do for a living. I typed in a name I'd seen tagged in her Instagram stories for months, Travis Dorsey. He ran a gym in Scottsdale. One of those boutique-style fitness centers where the lighting is better than the workouts. The captions were always the same: grind, mindset, push harder. What I found was exactly what I expected, and somehow worse. 3 maxed-out credit cards, a lease he was already behind on, and a business loan hanging by a thread. He'd recently applied for another $150,000 loan, listing Melissa as a co-signer. I dug deeper and found something uglier. Her name had appeared on multiple financial documents tied to Dorsey Fit LLC. All within the past 6 months. So this wasn't new. She'd been planning her exit for the better part of a year, using our money to bankroll someone else's sinking ship. I closed the laptop and stared at my reflection in the window. She didn't just leave me. She'd bet everything on a man who was already drowning. And she'd dragged my name in with him. By Saturday morning, I was sitting at my brother Logan's kitchen table, laptop open, caffeine in hand. I need everything you can pull on Dorsey Fit LLC, I told him. Bank records, credit lines, co-signed loans, anything public. Logan gave me a long look. Legal channels only, right? I nodded. We're just connecting public dots. Faster than most people can. He got to work. Logan wasn't just a digital security consultant, he was one of the best I knew. We'd collaborated before on white-collar crime cases, but this was personal. And we both treated it that way. 3 hours later, we had what we needed. Travis Dorsey wasn't just broke. He was leveraged to the hilt, faking success on social media while his business hemorrhaged money. Melissa hadn't landed a better man, she'd thrown her future onto a sinking ship. But that wasn't the worst part. Look at this, Logan said, spinning his monitor toward me. Loan application. 4 months ago. Equipment financing for $175,000. Melissa co-signed. I leaned in. That's before she left me. Exactly. And see this? He pointed to a section near the bottom of the digital form. They used your joint marital status to boost their creditworthiness. That means the bank believed your assets were on the line too. I felt my stomach turn. She put my financial name behind his gym without me knowing. It gets worse, Logan said. 2 business credit cards, a car lease, and the lease for their new space, all co-signed by Melissa. All while still legally married to you. Every document told the same story: Melissa had used my income, my name, my credibility as a financial professional to open doors for a man who couldn't hold them open himself. I sat back in my chair and exhaled. She really had no idea what she was doing. No. Logan said. Neither of them did. And now, thanks to the trail she left behind, I was holding the matches. All I had to do was strike. The next afternoon, I drove to Dorsey Fit, Travis Dorsey's pride and joy. The place was exactly what I expected: polished concrete floors, floor-to-ceiling mirrors, motivational slogans painted in cursive gold script. Everyone there looked like they were auditioning for a commercial. Image over substance. Melissa would have loved it. I walked in wearing a plain button-down and jeans. No bravado. No scene. Just a man with purpose. Travis spotted me almost immediately. He was taller than in his filtered selfies, tanner than natural. With the overly rehearsed confidence of someone used to getting by on charm. "You must be Ethan," he said, extending a hand with a toothy smile. "Melissa's mentioned you." "I'm sure she has," I replied, ignoring the handshake. "We need to talk. Privately." He hesitated, just a flicker, then motioned toward a glass-walled office at the back. I stepped inside and shut the door behind us. The gym noise dulled instantly. "What's this about?" he asked, still wearing that smile like armor. I placed a manila folder on his desk. "This is everything tying you to Melissa, from bank loans, credit cards, business leases. All co-signed using marital assets you had no legal access to." He flipped through the documents, the color draining from his face with every page. "These are all legitimate business agreements." "Maybe. But they're backed by fraudulent claims. You got approval because of my income and reputation. That's over now. We're divorcing. Those guarantees no longer apply." He blinked, confused. "Wait. Melissa said you were wealthy. That money wasn't an issue." "It's not," I said. "But fraud is." He sat down. The weight of it all finally landing. "So, what happens now?" "Now." I stood up. "The banks will call in the loans. You'll need to come up with the money. Quickly. I'm freezing everything tied to our marriage, and your business is sitting on my name like a house of cards." I paused at the door. "One more thing," I said, turning back. "When Melissa moved out, she took personal items that belonged to me, photos, a watch, things that matter. I want them back." Travis stared at me for a long second. Then gave a tight nod. "I'll see what I can do." "Do that," I said. And walked out without looking back. 3 weeks later, I sat across from Melissa and her attorney in a downtown Charlotte conference room. It was the first time I'd seen her in person since the text. She looked different. The polished veneer was still there, designer blazer. Makeup done with precision, but there was something behind her eyes now. Strain. Panic. The consequences had finally caught up. Her attorney opened the conversation. "My client is willing to be reasonable in the division of assets, despite what she views as the aggressive actions taken by Mr. Caldwell." Grace didn't flinch. "That's good to hear. Because there's been a development." She slid a document across the table. Melissa's attorney scanned it, his face going pale. "This is from the bank." "Yes," Grace said. Their fraud investigation concluded Melissa forged Ethan's signature on multiple loan documents, including the equipment loan and 2 leases. All using marital assets as backing. Melissa's hands gripped the edge of the table. "Criminal charges?" she asked quietly, looking at me. I met her gaze without blinking. "The bank filed the report with the DA. That wasn't my call." Her attorney leaned in, whispering urgently. She shook her head at first, then slowly nodded. "If Ms. Caldwell is willing to sign our proposed settlement agreement today," Grace continued, "Ethan is prepared to provide a statement to the bank that could lessen the likelihood of criminal prosecution. He will also agree not to pursue charges for the unauthorized asset transfer or theft of personal property." Melissa stared down at the table, the reality of her situation pressing in. She wasn't just losing the money. She was losing the game she thought she was playing. Eventually, she signed, silently, without argument. "You'll keep your yoga studio," I told her quietly. "It's profitable. You'll keep your car and personal belongings. No alimony. But every debt you incurred in my name, that's yours. And Travis, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Travis is on his own, Grace replied. The bank has already started repossession proceedings. As we left the room, Melissa touched my arm. I never thought you'd fight back, she said. I looked her in the eye. That was your first mistake. Then I walked away, no anger, no bitterness. Just done. A month later, I moved out of the hotel and into a modest craftsman house just outside downtown Charlotte. It wasn't flashy, nothing like the upscale neighborhood Melissa once insisted we belonged in, but it had character. Needed a little work, too, which was exactly what I wanted. Something to keep my hands busy while my mind finally quieted down. I heard through mutual friends that Melissa had left the state. Moved to Colorado. Her Instagram was full of mountain views, yoga poses, and vague inspirational quotes about growth and starting over. Not a single mention of the lawsuit, the debt, or how close she'd come to a criminal record. Travis's gym had been sold to a national fitness chain for pennies on the dollar. He relocated to Miami, probably trying to rebrand and bury the scandal. Neither of them reached out. I didn't expect them to. One Saturday, Logan stopped by to help me install cabinets in the kitchen. As we measured for hinges, he glanced over and asked, "Heard anything from Melissa?" I shook my head. No. And I don't expect to. You know, he said, you could have gone after her a lot harder. The fraud alone would have buried her in court. I paused, then shrugged. What would have been the point? She's not my problem anymore. We worked in silence for a while, measuring, cutting, fitting panels together. There was something peaceful about it. Tangible. Real. The exact opposite of the chaos I'd just left behind. Later that evening, I sat on my back porch with a glass of bourbon. The neighborhood was quiet, save for the occasional dog bark or kids' laughter. It felt honest. Not curated. Not for show. I thought about the last 15 years, how I'd let someone else define my worth, my direction. Even my silence. And how, in the end, I hadn't just survived it. I'd prepared for it. I didn't feel like I'd won. I didn't need to. I just felt free. The next morning, I called my office and told them I'd be taking 2 weeks off. No schedule. No destination. Just me, the open road, and not a single lie left to untangle.